Hey everyone, I'm Mike and I just completed America's Great Loop on a jet ski. And so something I've done that is on most of my trips is I put together a little by the numbers ring. So uh, if you've kind of watched some of my videos, you probably know that I'm a little bit on the detail oriented side. So I got my good old data nerd shirt on here and um, got my flag flying as well, the paddle there with the two flags on it that was flying on the ski the whole time on the trip. So I chose to kind of put together a little slideshow or PowerPoint just because that I figured there's probably a good chance I'm going to do, somebody's going to ask me to do a presentation sometime, and so putting it together while it was all still fresh, I just thought was a good way to go about doing that. So here we go. We're gonna start in with kind of a trip here by the numbers. So, and if this is your first video you're catching of me and you're not really sure what the Great Loop is, this is not the video to explain it all. Very quickly though, it's about a 5,500-mile loop around the eastern U.S. and it's since I'm not on the loop, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, which is not on the loop. I had basically 625 miles down and another 625 back to get on the loop and then back to Omaha. So most loopers, if there is a typical looper, they will do it on a live-on boat. It's something between a 25 and a 50-foot boat of some sort, motor yacht, catamaran, trawler, you name it. Sometimes bigger. But nonetheless, that's how most loopers do it. They take a full year to do it, and then there's others that do it in segments, right? They'll get 1,000 miles in, and then wait a year or wait a few months, and then kind of keep going down and complete the loop over a number of years. Well, I chose to do the loop on a jet ski. Essentially, it's a 22 Sea-Doo Fish Pro trophy. And I did it in a little over 3 months, and basically the trip was my Mount Everest. I knew it would be a big endurance challenge physically, mentally, and even emotionally. So I wanted to do a breakdown of the numbers, and so what did you do this summer, right? When kids go back to school and the teachers ask, well, what did you do this summer? And okay, well, here's how I spent my summer. I went on a little boat trip, a little boat being the jet ski, and for the total trip, I was gone June 9th through September 17th. That's a total of 101 days. Now, there are some people that are very interested in just the loop, right? And just doing the loop. I call it the pigtail, the Missouri River, where I had to go down and back to get on the loop. I broke that out. So 91 days on the loop, 10 days dedicated to the pigtail or Missouri River portion. Now within the 91 days, I had two different 1-week vacations that I had planned, and I wanted to stick to them. One was my 25th wedding anniversary with my wife. Had to keep that one. And we celebrated that down in Florida. And then another week in Virginia was spent with my brothers on our 31st annual brothers trip. So those were breaks from the ski, kind of while doing the loop. The Florida trip was after a couple of weeks of skiing. I got down to Florida, was able to take a week off. And then by the time I reached around Virginia, it was another nice 1-week break from the ski. They also overlapped with service appointments for the ski to get oil changes, etc. So I also worked while on the loop. I'm not retired yet, and my role allows me to kind of have some flexibility in what I do. I described that in another video as well, but I worked 19 days while on this 101-day trip. And so that kept me mentally busy. If I wasn't skiing, I was working, or on those two vacations. So there were 5 weather days that I had one in Naples on a weekend where I wanted to ski on Saturday and weather came in and I chose I'm just going to hold tight and wait a day. Same with Atlantic City. And then on Mackinac Island, there was the wind patterns for Lake Michigan were not favorable for an extended period of time. So I went ahead and did 3 whole weather days on Mackinac Island and flew my wife up to the island, and we spent some time together on the island there. There were 2 other down days. One was due to mechanical issues. The ski was having trouble starting, and so I was doing some troubleshooting with that. And then also 2 different half days where I worked a half a day and just kind of took the other day as off a little bit and didn't ski. So that left me with total travel days of 58, 49 of which were on the loop, and 9 travel days doing the pigtail. So, teacher, in a little over 3 months, I basically took 2 different 1-week vacations. I worked almost 4 work weeks, and oh, by the way, I jet skied 6,800 miles and did the Great Loop. So, I had a busy summer. Let's talk about the nights, those hot summer nights. So again, total trip, there was 100 nights, 90 on the loop, 10 on the Missouri River. Those 2 planned vacations were 15 nights. And hotels, I spent 46 nights in hotels at 33 different hotels. So that meant I doubled up at various hotels, 2 nights at the same hotel. Several times, quite a few times, or even 3 nights in the same spot. Hosts were the big surprise. There were only a couple of people that I knew that were on the loop that I planned to stop at, just maybe 2 or 3 people for a few nights. But throughout the trip, various people reached out through Facebook, etc., and offered up their home. And so this ended up being really a difference maker for the trip. I stayed with 19 different hosts on 31 different nights, so that was huge. And then as far as camping, I spent 8 nights camping, and most of that was on the Missouri River where there's no marinas. I would just camp on the sandbars. Also between Hoppy's Marina and Paducah, Kentucky, I also camped on the Mississippi River. So that's a total of 60 different hotels, houses, campsites that I stayed at in 85 nights. That is a lot of moving around. That's a lot of unloading the ski at night and reloading the ski in the morning. It was a lot of moving around. Okay, what about the machine? Tell me about the machine. All right, well, for the trip, it was 6,795 miles. Now, I had budgeted 7,500 when just trying to do a budget. This is way back in February. I knew the trip was about 7,000 miles. I budgeted for some side trips. Maybe I would go into Canada, maybe I wouldn't. Or maybe I'd go up the Potomac, maybe I wouldn't. Ended up, and then also just the more ports you stay at, the more going in and out of inlets you do, and that adds miles. And so I budgeted just on the high side. So I'm going to call it 6,800 miles. Gallons of fuel. I went through 1,172 gallons, and I had budgeted 1,304. And that's because I budgeted 5.75 miles to the gallon, and I actually got 5.8. I was hoping for 6, but I got 5.8 over the entire trip, and that's in great flat water conditions, the rivers, and also in horrible, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot seas. And the big water, I would get in the 4s, maybe 5, low 5s, and on the flat water I'd get 6, 6.5. So my total fuel cost then was a little over $6,000, and I beat my budget. Came in under. The average price per gallon, I had budgeted 5.25, and this is well before the price surge that happened in Q2. I thought I was way on the high side. I just wanted a budget on the high side. Well, nope. 5.35 is what ended up being my average fuel price. Total engine hours on the trip ended up being 356, and I had budgeted 441. I thought I would be traveling slower and I would be idling a lot more. So, and then also more miles as well. So between all that, I really beat my budget there by quite a bit. And then, a lot of the folks on boats, it's more about gallons per hour. And so while that term on a ski is a little less meaningful, there it is just for the boats to compare. I came in at 3.29 gallons per hour. And my budget was lower again because of I thought I'd be doing more idling, etc. All right, so a few more machine stats here. My average speed, if you take the engine hours and divide the total number of miles, right? We're at 19.09 average miles per hour. And so that's a little bit faster than what I thought I would do. Now my cruising speed would be 25 to 30, but as far as an average speed of while that engine's running, what's your average speed? That is higher than I thought I would do. Again, the travel days, 58 travel days, I had budgeted for 75. Again, there was more miles I was budgeting for, but I was also thinking I'd only get 100 miles in per day instead of the 117 that I averaged. My shortest day was 21 miles, and longest was 232 miles on the river. So my average fuel burn per day, somebody had asked that question, ended up being a little over 20 gallons. And the machine holds 18.5. So the extra fuel jugs that I carried with me, I carried an extra 24 gallon of fuel. That gave me all kinds of flexibility. I loved having those, and I'll get into that a little bit more. The machine service. So I had budgeted for essentially a little over $3,000 of machine service. Now this is just your normal routine maintenance. The ski calls for oil change, etc. every 100 hours. I did some burn-in time on the machine, like 23 hours on the machine before I left, or 24 hours. And so there were 3 stops that I had pre-scheduled ahead of time. One near Destin, near our condo. One in essentially Virginia Beach area, Chesapeake, Virginia, and then one just north of Detroit. And so I knew there would be those 3 stops. Then, of course, once I got back to Omaha, I'd have to do another service. So I'm estimating, I haven't done the service yet in Omaha, I'm just estimating on what that final bill will be, but it came in a lot less. And one huge reason it came in less is because Sea-Doo did end up, I can't really call it a sponsorship outright, but they did pick up one of my service bills, the second one, and that was almost $1,000. So that was great. I'm very appreciative that they did that. That was wonderful that they did that. So where did I stay? Was I staying in the Ritz Carlton or Hyatt, or am I staying at Motel 6s? Well, it really varied. So again, there was those 46 nights in a hotel. Now I had budgeted 90, right? Again, I did not think I'd be staying with these hosts the whole time, or so many nights. I just budgeted like I was going to be in a hotel almost every night. And so that was a huge savings. I can't say it enough how appreciative I am of all those hosts that reached out. And not only was it amazing meeting them and having great conversations and sharing stories, but it also was a very meaningful impact on the overall bottom line of the trip costs. The total price per night ended up being $180. Now, one huge reason for it being high is because we stayed 4 nights on Mackinac Island, and that was almost $400 a night. It was very close to Labor Day weekend. It was last minute notice to book it, and so I paid a premium to stay on the island. And if we take away those 4 nights, the average is right at my budget of 160. Now you got to keep in mind, you'd think, oh, $160 a night. Some people might think that's a lot, but you got to remember, I'm on the coastline. I'm near marinas, right? I'm in tropical destinations. I'm not near cheap motels a lot of the times. Those just weren't an option sometimes. So uh, I generally tried to get into a cheaper hotel, usually, if I could, but those options weren't always available. So my total hotel costs were a little over $8,000. I'd budgeted way high because of the number of nights, and so again, a huge savings there on the hotel costs. For the camping nights, I had budgeted 10, and I actually had 8. I thought I might be staying in some campgrounds. Ended up not staying in any campgrounds, and so I didn't have any camping fees associated with that. It was all just sandbars on the river. So that was cool. And then for slips, so I had budgeted 100 nights of slips, right? Pretty much every night that I was, where the machine was not, when I had the machine serviced, they kept the machine for the week. So I didn't have to worry about slips then, but I budgeted a slip for every night otherwise. Well, there were a lot of time, like the camping nights, didn't have to worry about slips. And then for my hosts, most of the time they had their own private dock or some other uh, arrangement where I didn't have to pay for slips. So I ended up staying, docking the ski in either a true slip or just alongside a floating dock, maybe a dinghy dock, whatever, 46 nights. Now, the average price for those 46 nights was a little over $16, and I had budgeted 30. But 18 of those 46 were free. They were just like, you're doing the loop on a ski, we're not going to charge you. 18 of those nights, they were just, we're not going to charge you. So if you take away the 18, and now you're at what, 28 nights. Now that price average for the slip does jump up closer to that $30 number. So my total slip costs were $740, well under the $3,000 I budgeted. Again, mostly because of the hosts saving me money. All right, what's to eat? What's for supper? So this one is pretty interesting to me because the number of times I ate at a restaurant, and sometimes this was with hosts where I would pick up the bill. Sometimes it was a very simple restaurant, and sometimes it was a very nice sit-down meal. But I had budgeted 210 nights or meals at a restaurant, and it ended up being just 84. Again, the hosts had a huge part to play in that. I also would either just flat out skip meals. Many of my lunches were very simple protein bars or on the ski, right? Where I did not stop for a meal very often at all. I think only a couple of times did I stop the ski midday, sit down at a meal, and then keep going. I think just maybe once or twice. So 84 times at a restaurant. I budgeted $18 thinking it was going to be a lot of Subways or a lot of, fast food, various places. I ended up eating big. When I did sit down, I ate big. And there were a few times I splurged and had, nice steak dinners, etc. And also alcohol as part of the meal cost, right, played into that as well. So my average meal price was $36. So that gave me an overall restaurant cost of a little over $3,000. Again, beating budget on that. grocery stops. So I knew that I'd have to resupply the ski with things like bagels or Pop-Tarts or protein bars or bottles of water, Gatorade, that kind of stuff. Um, I stopped and resupplied basically 12 times is all, which is kind of good. And my total grocery cost was real low. Basically, I was not eating as much while on the ski at all. I would the breakfast. I would either do a breakfast at the hotel, or even just skip meals a lot because the night before I ate so big. Um, so my average grocery cost per day, a little over $4. I budgeted $11 in groceries per day. And one of the reasons I did that is because I thought that when I stopped at marinas for fuel, there'd be like convenience stores at the marinas where I would, grab a candy bar or, have a cold Gatorade or things like that. I ended up not doing that hardly at all. And that saved me a lot of money because that's really expensive doing that. All right, rides. So, will you give me a ride? Which I got good at. I became bold and just asking people for a ride if I needed it, especially in smaller towns that did not have an Uber and their taxi service was maybe not reliable. So the number of Ubers and or taxis that I took was 37. Now I budgeted way high because I thought I was going to be staying in a lot more hotels. So again, the hosts saved me quite a bit of money here because they would either pick me up or I would arrive at their house. All right, so the average dollar per ride, I budgeted 15 and it came in at 18. Not bad. But again, a big savings there thanks to those hosts. All right, this is before the trip, and how many times did I hear this from Jolene, my wife? Oh boy, what'd you order now? All the boxes that came in from Amazon and the like. And so I ordered a lot of supplies. I knew I needed great gear on this trip. One of the pieces of equipment that I purchased was a rugged Android tablet. It's from Sailproof. It's from Belgium. Pretty cool. I'll have another video on that. It was pricey, but it was worth it. That VHF marine radio, standard Horizon handheld marine radio. Loved it. Definitely worth that. I bought a new 360 camera. I had an old GoPro, but it was time to upgrade, so went with this camera. Awesome camera, great editing tools, really enjoyed that. The aluminum rack was another big expense. The aluminum itself was expensive, the supplies. I had it powder coated, had it painted, and then also, that $591 does not include. I had a good friend build the rack for me and ended up giving him a large gift because he had a lot of time invested in it and also had some help welding it. So I could go on and on about all the other supplies, dry bags, and just a lot of equipment that I purchased for the trip. It ended up being $8,500, and so I felt it was so important to have the right gear on the trip, and so I invested big on all of those supplies. Now I also knew that there would be unexpected expenses, and I figured this would either come in the form of maintenance on the ski, where I would, some mechanical breakdown and have to pay a big service bill, or just other supplies or equipment that I wasn't expecting. And the biggest one was my Android tablet failed me. It's my fault. I let water intrude into the charge port. I got a little careless with that and let water splashed up in there a few too many times, and basically burn out the screen. And so I had to buy a new one. But there are a few other supplies, a second flagpole because I bent and ruined my my paddle that I used as a flagpole, a couple other things. All right, so going through all those expenses, total it up for me, would you? Give me the rundown. So we kind of went through all of these and just kind of putting them side by side with their budgets. You can pause the video and really study this if you want. And so there was also just other miscellaneous that I didn't talk about: tow insurance, various software or apps, maps that I downloaded for the Garmin unit. I had a massage, activities while on Mackinac Island, tips, etc. Came in at around $2,000. So for a total cost, and I'm sharing these numbers because people have asked me. They're very curious. There's many that have reached out to me and they want to do this trip, and so I'm just being as brutally honest as I can. This is not a cheap trip. This is expensive, and especially if you do not have the hosts that I did, or if that's not your style, and you're going to end up staying in more hotels and slips and Ubers, etc. But in my case, it came out to a little over $32,000, and that does not include the depreciation on the ski. All right, the ski was like a $21,000 machine, and I'm sure it took quite the depreciation hit, as it now has 380 hours on that machine, which is a lot for a ski. Now, a lot of loopers say it's not fair to include the food costs or the those initial supplies. Because the initial supplies, I can go reuse those on other trips. So you back those two things out, and maybe you already have all the supplies you need, or a lot of them. You back those things out, and it comes out to a little over $20,000 still. And just the fuel and the hotels alone get you right up there pretty quick. So again, huge savings over budget. Can't thank the hosts enough. It was a very meaningful savings to the overall bottom line. So thank you. All right. With all of that out of the way, those are kind of the
Time to give you guys a little break here on the by the numbers video. But yeah, the first half was all about the some of the hardcore statistics that you would typically see, miles per gallon and all that good stuff, and the cost, of course. But part two, look for that to come up, and that's a little bit on the non-traditional side. So, all right, thanks for watching.